The City of Dreadful Night. Chapter Roman 1. A real live city. We are all backwards men and barbarians, though we others dwelling beyond the ditch, in the outer darkness of the mafasal. There are no such things as commissioners and heads of departments in the world. And there is only one city in India. Bombay is too green, too pretty, and too stragglesome, and Madras died ever so long ago. Let us take off our hats to Calcutta, the man-sided, the smoky, the magnificent, as we drive in over the Hughley Bridge in the dawn of a still February morning. We have left India behind us at Howrah Station, and now we enter foreign parts, no, not wholly foreign, say rather too familiar. All men of certain age know the feeling of caged irritation and illustration in the graphic, a bar of music, or the light words of a friend 6 from home, may set it ablaze that comes from the knowledge of our lost heritage of London. At home, they, the other men, our equals, have at their disposal all that town can supply, the roar of the streets, the lights, the music, the pleasant places, the millions of their own kind, and a wilderness full of pretty fresh-colored Englishwomen, theaters and restaurants. It is their right, they accept it as such, and even affect to look upon it with contempt, and we have nothing except the few amusements that we painfully build up for ourselves, dolorous dissipations of gymkhanas, where everyone knows everybody else, or the chastened intoxication of dances, where all engagements are booked in ink 10 days ahead, and where everybody's antecedents are as patent as his or her method of waltzing. We have been deprived of our inheritance. The men at home are enjoying it all, not knowing how fair and rich it is, and we at the most can only fly westward for a few months and gorge what, properly speaking, should take 7 or 8 or 10 luxurious years. That is the lost heritage of London, and the knowledge of the forfeiture, willful or forced, comes to most men at times and seasons, and they get cross. Calcutta holds out false hopes of some return. The dense smoke hangs low in the chill of the morning over an ocean of roofs, and as the city wakes there goes up to the smoke a deep full-throated boom of life and motion and humanity. For this reason does he who sees Calcutta for the first time hang joyously out of the tickagharry and sniff the smoke, and turn his face toward the tumult, saying, "This is at last some portion of my heritage returned to me. This is a city, there is life here, and there should be all manner of pleasant things for the having across the river." And under the smoke, when Leland, he who wrote the Hans Breitmann ballads, once desired to know the name of an austere plug-hatted redskin of repute, his answer from the lips of a half-breed was, "He Injun, he big Injun, he heap, big Injun, he damn big heap Injun, he damn mighty great big heap Injun, he Jones." The litany is an expressive one, and exactly describes the first emotions of a wandering savage adrift in Calcutta. The eye has lost its sense of proportion. The focus has contracted through overmuch residence in upcountry. Stations 20 minutes canter from hospital to parade ground, and the mind has shrunk with the eye, both say together, as 8 they take in the sweep of shipping above and below the Hughley Bridge. Why, this is London, this is the docks, this is imperial, this is worth coming across India to see. Then a distinctly wicked idea takes possession of the mind. What a divine, what a heavenly place to loot! This gives place to a much worse devil, that of conservatism. It seems not only a wrong, but a criminal thing to allow natives to have any voice in the control of such a city, adorned, docked, wharfed, fronted and reclaimed by Englishmen, existing only because England lives, and dependent for its life on England. All India knows of the Calcutta municipality, but has anyone thoroughly investigated the big Calcutta stink? There is only one. Benares is fouler, in point of concentrated pent-up muck, and there are local stenches in Peshawar, which are stronger than the B Roman 100s, but for diffused soul-sickening expansiveness, the reek of Calcutta beats both Benares and Peshawar. Bombay cloaks her stenches with a veneer of a saftida and hookah tobacco. Calcutta is above pretense. There is no tracing back the Calcutta plague to any one source. It is faint, it is sickly, and it is indescribable, but Americans at the Great Eastern Hotel say that it is something like the 9 smell of the Chinese Quarter in San Francisco. It is certainly not an Indian smell. It resembles the essence of corruption that has rotted for the second time, with clammy odor of blue slime, and there is no escape from it. It blows across the Maidan. It comes in gusts into the corridors of the Great Eastern Hotel, what they are pleased to call the palaces of Chowringhi. It swirls round the Bengal Club. It pours out of by-streets with sickening intensity, and the breeze of the morning is laden with it. It is first found in spite of the fume of the engines in Howrah Station. It seems to be worst in the little lanes at the back of Lal Bazar, where the drinking shops are, but it is nearly as bad opposite Government House and in the public offices. The thing is intermittent. 6 moderately pure mouthfuls of air may be drawn without offense. Then comes the 7th wave, and the queasiness of an uncultured stomach. If you live long enough in Calcutta, you grow used to it. The regular residents admit the disgrace, but their answer is wait till the wind blows off the salt lakes where all the sewage goes, and then you'll smell something. That is their defense. Small wonder that they consider Calcutta is a fit place for a permanent viceroy. Englishmen, who can calmly extenu 1081 shame by another, are capable of asking for anything and expecting to get it. If an upcountry station holding 3,000 troops and 20 civilians owns such a possession as Calcutta does, the deputy commissioner or the cantonment magistrate would have all the natives off the board of management or decently shoveled into the background until the mess was abated. Then they might come on again and talk of high-handed oppression as much as they liked. That stink to an unprejudiced nose damns Calcutta as a city of kings. And in spite of that stink, they even encourage natives to look after the place. The damp drainage-soaked soil is sick with the teeming life of 100 years, and the municipal board list is choked with the names of nativesmen of the breed born in and raised off this surfeited muck-heap. They own property, these amiable Aryans, on the municipal and the Bengal Legislative Council launch a proposal to tax them on that property, and they naturally howl. They also howl up country. But there the halls for mass meetings are few and the vernacular papers fewer, and with a Zabardusty secretary and a president whose favor is worth the having and whose wrath is undesirable, men are kept clean despite them 11 selves, and may not poison their neighbors. Why, asks a savage, let them vote at all? They can put up with this filthiness. They cannot have any feelings worth caring a rush for. Let them live quietly and hide away their money under our protection, while we tax them till they know through their purses the measure of their neglect in the past. And when a little of the smell has been abolished, bring them back again to talk and take the credit of enlightenment. The better classes own their broughams and barouches. The worse can shoulder an Englishman into the kennel and talk to him as though he were a kidmatka. They can refer to an English lady as an aurat. They are permitted a freedom, not, to put it too coarsely, off speech, which if used by an Englishman toward an Englishman would end in serious trouble. They are fenced and protected and made inviolate. Surely they might be content with all those things without entering into matters which they cannot by the nature of their birth understand. Now, whether all this genial diatribe be the outcome of an unbiased mind, or the result first of sickness caused by that ferocious stench, and secondly of headache due to day-long smoking to drown the stench, is an open question. Any 12-way Calcutta is a fearsome place for a man not educated up to it. A word of advice to other barbarians: do not bring a North Country servant into Calcutta. He is sure to get into trouble, because he does not understand the customs of the city. A Punjabi, in this place, for the first time esteems it his bounden duty to go to the Ajaibgarth Museum. Such an one has gone, and is even now returned very angry and troubled in the spirit. I went to the museum, says he, and no one gave me any gali. I went to the market to buy my food, and then I sat upon a seat. There came a chaprisi who said, go away, I want to sit here. I said, I am here first. He said, I am a chaprisi nickel jow. And he hit me. Now that sitting place was open to all, so I hit him till he wept. He ran away for the police, and I went away too for the police. Here are all sahibs. Can I have leave from 2 o'clock to go and look for that chaprisi and hit him again? Behold the situation, an unknown city full of smell that makes one long for rest and retirement, and a champing knocker, not yet 6 hours in the stew, who has started a blood feud with an unknown chaprisi and clamors to go forth to the fray. General orders that whatever may 13 be said or done to him, he must not say or do anything in return. Laid to an eloquent harangue on the quality of izzat and the nature of face blackening. There is no izzat in Calcutta, and this awful smell blackens the face of any Englishman who sniffs it. Alas for the lost delusion of the heritage that was to be restored. Let us sleep, and pray that Calcutta may be better tomorrow. At present it is remarkably like sleeping with a corpse. 14. Chapter Roman 2, The Reflections of a Savage. Morning brings counsel. Does Calcutta smell so pestiferously? After all heavy rain has fallen in the night, she is newly washed, and the clear sunlight shows her at her best. Where in all this wilderness of life shall a man go? Newman & Co. publish a 3-rupee guide, which produces first despair, and then fear in the mind of the reader. Let us drop Newman & Co. out of the topmost window of the Great Eastern, trusting to luck and the flight of the hours to evolve wonders and mysteries and amusements. The Great Eastern hums with life through all its 100 rooms. Doors slam merrily, and all the nations of the earth run up and down the staircases. This alone is refreshing, because the passers bump you and ask you to stand aside. Fancy finding any place outside a living room where Englishmen are crowded together to this extent. Fancy sitting down 70 strong to table d'hôte, and with a deafening 15 clatter of knives and forks. Fancy finding a real bar whence drinks may be obtained, and joy of joys. Fancy stepping out of the hotel into the arms of a live white helmeted button-truncheoned bobby, a beautiful burly bobby, just the sort of man who 7,000 miles away staves off the stuttering witticism of the 3 o'clock in the morning reveler by the strong badged arm of authority. What would happen if one spoke to this bobby? Would he be offended? He is not offended. He is affable. He has to patrol the pavement in front of the Great Eastern, and to see that the crowding ticketeers do not jam toward a presumably respectable white. He behaves as a man and a brother. There is no arrogance about him, and this is disappointing. Closer inspection shows that he is not a real bobby. After all, he is a municipal police. Something, and his uniform is not correct, at least if they have not changed the dress of the men at home. But no matter, later on we will inquire into the Calcutta bobby, because he is a white man and has to deal with some of the toughest folk that ever set out of malice aforethought to paint Job Charnock City vermilion. You cannot cross Old Courthouse Street without looking carefully to see that you stand no 16 chance of being run over. This is beautiful. There is a steady roar of traffic, cut every 2 minutes by the deeper roll of the trams. The driving is eccentric, not to say bad, but there is the traffic more than unsophisticated eyes have beheld for a certain number of years. It means business, it means money-making, it means crowded and hurrying life, and it gets into the blood and makes it move. Here be big shops with plate-glass front sol, displaying the well-known names of firms that we savages only correspond with through the Roman 5pp, and parcels post. They are all here, as large as life, ready to supply anything you need if you only care to sign. Great is the fascination of being able to obtain a thing on the spot without having to write for a week and wait for a month, and then get something quite different. No wonder pretty ladies who live anywhere within a reasonable distance come down to do their shopping personally. Look here, if you want to be respectable, you mustn't smoke in the streets. Nobody does it. This is advice kindly tendered by a friend in a black coat. There is no levy or lieutenant governor in sight, but he wears the frock coat because it is daylight and he can be seen. He also refrains from smoking for the same Ria 17 sun. He admits that Providence built the open air to be smoked in, but he says that it isn't the thing. This man has a brougham, a remarkably natty little pillbox, with a curious wobble about the wheels. He steps into the brougham and puts on a top hat, a shiny black plug. There was a man up country once who owned a top hat. He leased it to amateur theatrical companies for some seasons, until the nap wore off. Then he threw it into a tree and wild bees hived in it. Men were wont to come and look at the hat in its palmy days for the sake of feeling homesick. It interested all the station and died, with 2 seers of babool flower honey in its bosom. But top hats are not intended to be worn in India. They are as sacred as home letters and old rosebuds. The friend cannot see this. He allows that if he stepped out of his brougham and walked about in the sunshine for 10 minutes, he would get a bad headache in half an hour. He would probably catch sunstroke. He allows all this, but he keeps to his hat, and cannot see why a barbarian is moved to inextinguishable laughter at the sight. Everyone who owns a brougham, and many people who hire ticketeers, keep top hats and black frock coats. The effect is curious, and at first fills the beholder with surprise. 18. And now let us see the handsome houses, where the wealthy nobles dwell. Northerly lies the great human jungle of the native cities stretching from Burra Bazar to Chitpur that can keep southerly is the Maidan and Chowringhi. If you get out into the center of the Maidan, you will understand why Calcutta is called the city of palaces. The traveled American said so. At the Great Eastern, there is a short tower falsely called a memorial, standing in a waste of soft, sour green that is as good a place to get to as any other near here. The newly landed whaler is taught the whole duty of the trafos, and careers madly in a break near here. Young Calcutta gets upon a horse, and is incontinently run away with near here. Hundreds of kine feed close to the innumerable trams and the whirl of traffic along the face of Chowringhi road. The size of the Maidan takes the heart out of anyone accustomed to the gardens of up-country, just as they say Newmarket Heath cows a horse accustomed to more shooting course. The huge level is studded with brazen statues of eminent gentlemen riding fretful horses on diabolically severe curbs. The expanse dwarfs the statues, dwarfs everything except the frontage of the faraway Chowringhi road. It is Bidget is impressive. Their 19 is no escaping the fact they built houses in the old days, when the rupee was 2 shillings and a penny. Those houses are 3-storied and ornamented with service staircases like houses in the hills. They are also very close together, and they own garden walls of pucker masonry pierced with a single gate. In their shoot-upness, they are British. In their spaciousness, they are Oriental. But those service staircases do not look healthy. We will form an amateur sanitary commission and call upon Chowringhi. A first introduction to the Calcutta Darwin is not nice. If he is chewing pan, he does not take the trouble to get rid of his quid. If he is sitting on his charpy chewing sugar cane, he does not think it worth his while to rise. He has to be taught those things, and he cannot understand why he should be reproved. Clearly, he is a survival of a played-out system. Providence never intended that any native should be made a concierge more insolent than any of the French variety. The people of Calcutta put an urea in a little lodge close to the gate of their house, in order that loafers may be turned away, and the house is protected from theft. The natural result is that the Darwin treats everybody whom he does not know as a loafer, has an in 20 timid and vendible knowledge of all the outgoings and incomings in that house, and controls to a large extent the nomination of the knocker log. They say that one of the estimable class is now suing a bank for about 3 lakhs of rupees up country. A lieutenant governor's chaprassi has to work for 30 years before he can retire on 70,000 rupees of savings. The Calcutta Darwin is a great institution. The head and front of his offense is that he will insist upon trying to talk English. How he protects the houses Calcutta only knows. He can be frightened out of his wits by severe speech, and is generally asleep in calling hours. If a rough round of visits be any guide, 3 times out of 7, he is fragrant of drink. So much for the Darwin. Now for the houses he guards. Very pleasant is the sensation of being ushered into a pestiferously stable some drawing room. Does this always happen? No, not unless you shut up the room for some time. But if you open the gilmals, there are other smells. You see the stables and the servants' quarters are close. 2 people pay 500 a month for half a dozen rooms filled with adder of this kind. They make no complaint when they think the honor of the city is at stake. They say defiantly, yes, but you must. Remember 21, we're a metropolis. We are crowded here. We have no room. We aren't like your little stations. Chowringhi is a stately place full of sumptuous houses, but it is best to look at it hastily. Stop to consider for a moment what the cramped compounds, the black-soaked soil, the netted intricacies of the service staircases, the packed stables, the seethment of human life round the Darwin's lodges, and the curious arrangement of little open drains means, and you will call it a whited sepulchre. Men living in expensive tenements suffer from chronic sore throat, and will tell you cheerily that we've got typhoid in Calcutta now. Is the pest ever out of it? Everything seems to be built with a view to its comfort. It can lodge comfortably on roofs, climb along from the gutter pipe to piazza, or rise from sink to veranda, and thence to the topmost story. But Calcutta says that all is sound and produces figures to prove it, at the same time admitting that healthy cut flesh will not readily heal. Further evidence may be dispensed with. Here come pouring down Park Street on the Maidan a rush of broughams, neat buggies, the lightest of gigs, trim office brownberries, shining Victorias, and a sprinkling of veritable hansom cabs. In the broughams sit men in 22 top hats, in the other carts young men, all very much alike, and all immaculately turned out. A fresh stream from Chowringhi joins the Park Street detachment, and the two together stream away across the Maidan, toward the business quarter of the city. This is Calcutta, going to office, the civilians to the government buildings, and the young men to their firms and their blocks and their wharves. Here one sees that Calcutta has the best turnout in the empire. Horses and traps alike are enviably perfect, and mark, the touchstone of civilization's lamps are in the sockets. This is distinctly refreshing. Once more we will take off our hats to Calcutta. The well-appointed, the luxurious, the country-bred is a rare beast. Here his place is taken by the whaler, and the whaler, though a ruffian at heart, can be made to look like a gentleman. It would be indecorous as well as insane to applaud the winking harness, the perfectly lacquered panels, and the liveried saises. They show well in the outwardly fair roads, shadowed by the palaces. How many sections of the complex society of the place do the carts carry? Imprimis, the Bengal civilian who goes to writers' buildings and sits in a perfect office, and speaks flippantly of sending things into India, meaning thereby 23, the supreme government. He is a great person, and his mouth is full of promotion and appointment shop. Generally, he is referred to as a rising man. Calcutta seems full of rising men. Secondly, the government of India man who wears a familiar similar face, rents a flat when he is not up in the hills, and is rational on the subject of the drawbacks of Calcutta. Thirdly, the man of the firms, the pure non-official who fights under the banner of one of the great houses of the city, or for his own hand in a neat office, or dashes about Clive Street in a brougham doing share work or something of the kind. He fears not Bengal nor regards he India. He swears impartially at both when their actions interfere with his operations. His shop is quite unintelligible. He is like the English city man with the chill-off lives well, and entertains hospitably. In the old days he was greater than he is now, but still he bulks large. He is rational in so far that he will help the abuse of the municipality, but womanish in his insistence on the excellencies of Calcutta. Over and above these who are hurrying to work are the various brigades, squads, and detachments of the other interests, but they are sets and not sections, and revolve round Belvedere Government House and Fort 24. William Simla and Darjeeling claim them in the hot weather. Let them go, they wear top hats and frock coats. It is time to escape from Chowringhi Road and get among the longshore folk who have no prejudices against tobacco and who all use pretty nearly the same sort of hat. 25. Chapter Roman 3, the Council of the Gods. He set up conclusions to the number of 9,764. He went afterwards to the Sorbonne, where he maintained argument against the theologians for the space of 6 weeks, from 4 o'clock in the morning till 6 in the evening, except for an interval of 2 hours to refresh themselves and take their repasts. And at this were present the greatest part of the lords of the court, the masters of request, presidents, councillors, those of the accompts, secretaries, advocates, and others, as also the sheriffs of the said town. Pantagruel. The Bengal Legislative Council is sitting now. You will find it in an octagonal wing of writers' buildings straight across the Maidan. It's worth seeing. What are they sitting on? Municipal business, no end of a debate. So much for trying to keep low company. The longshore loafers must stand over without doubt. This council is going to hang someone for the state of the city, and Sir Stuart Bailey will be chief executioner. One does not come across councils every day. 26. Writers' buildings are large. You can trouble the busy workers of half a dozen departments before you stumble upon the black-stained staircase that leads to an upper chamber looking out over a populous street. Wild Chaprasis block, the way the councillor sahibs are sitting, but anyone can enter to the right of the Lat sahib's chair and go quietly. Ill-mannered minion, does he expect the Austrican spectator to prance in with a jubilant war-whoop or turn Catherine wheels round that sumptuous octagonal room with the blue-domed roof? There are gilt capitals to the half-pillars, and an Egyptian-patterned lotus stencil makes the walls decorously gay. A thick-bowed carpet covers all the floor and must be delightful in the hot weather. On a black wooden throne, comfortably cushioned in green leather, sits Sir Stuart Bailey, ruler of Bengal. The rest are all great men, or else they would not be there not to know them. Argues oneself unknown. There are a dozen of them, and sit 6 aside at 2 slightly curved lines of beautifully polished desks. Thus Sir Stuart Bailey occupies the frog of a badly made horseshoe split at the toe. In front of him, at a table covered with books and pamphlets and papers, toils a secretary, there is a seat for the reporters, and that is all. The 27 place enjoys a chastened gloom, and its very atmosphere fills one with awe. This is the heart of Bengal, and uncommonly well upholstered. If the work matches the first-class furniture, the ink pots, the carpet, and the resplendent ceiling, there will be something worth seeing. But where is the criminal who is to be hanged for the stench that runs up and down writers' building staircases, for the rubbish heaps in the Chitpur Road, for the sickly savor of Chowringhi, for the dirty little tanks at the back of Belvedere, for the street full of smallpox, for the reeking garret-stand outside the Great Eastern, for the state of the stone and dirt pavements, for the condition of the gullies of Champuka, and for 100 other things. This, I submit, is an artificial scheme, in supersession of natures. Unit the individual. The speaker is a slight spare native in a flat hatterban and a black alpaca frock coat. He looks like a vacal to the Bouthiels, and with his unvarying smile and regulated gesticulation, recalls memories of up-country courts. He never hesitates, is never at a loss for a word, and never in one sentence repeats himself. He talks and talks and talks in a level voice, rising occasionally half an octave. When a point has to be driven home, some of his P28 riads sound very familiar. This, for instance, might be a sentence from the Mirror. So much for the principle. Let us now examine how far it is supported by precedent. This sounds bad. When a fluent native is discoursing of principles and precedents, the chances are that he will go on for some time. Moreover, where is the criminal? And what is all this talk about abstractions? They want shovels, not sentiments, in this part of the world. A friendly whisper brings enlightenment. They are plowing through the Calcutta municipal bill. Plurality of votes. You know, here are the papers. And so it is a mass of motions and amendments on matters relating to ward votes. Is it to be allowed to give 2 votes in one ward and 1 in another? Is Section 10 to be omitted? And is 1 man to be allowed 1 vote, and no more? How many votes does 300 rupees worth of landed property carry? Is it better to kiss a post or throw it in the fire? Not a word about carbolic acid and gangs of domes. The little man in the black choga revels in his subject. He is great on principles and precedents, and the necessity of popularizing our system. He fears that under certain circumstances the status of the candidates will decline. He riots 29 in self-adjusting majorities and the healthy influence of the educated middle classes. For a practical answer to this, there steals across the council chamber just one faint whiff. It is as though someone laughed low and bitterly, but no man heeds. The Englishmen look supremely bored. The native members stare stolidly in front of them. Sir Stuart Bailey's face is as set as the face of the Sphinx. For these things he draws his pay, and his is a low wage for heavy labor. But the speaker, now adrift, is not altogether to be blamed. He is a Bengali who has got before him just such a subject as his sole, lovethan, elaborate piece of academical reform, leading no hither. Here is a quiet room full of pens and papers, and there are men who must listen to him. Apparently there is no time limit to the speeches. Can you wonder that he talks? He says, "I submit," once every 90 seconds, varying the form with "I do submit." The popular element in the electoral body should have prominence quite. So he quotes 1 John Stuart Mill to prove it. There steals over the listener a numbing sense of nightmare. He has heard all this before somewhere, even down to J.S. Mill, and the references to the true interests of the ratepayers. He sees what is coming next. 30. Yes, there is the old Sabah Anjuman journalistic formula. Western education is an exotic plant of recent importation. How on earth did this man drag Western education into this discussion? Who knows? Perhaps Sir Stuart Bailey does. He seems to be listening. The others are looking at their watches. The spell of the level voice sinks the listener yet deeper into a trance. He is haunted by the ghosts of all the cant, of all the political platforms of Great Britain. He hears all the old vestry phrases, and once more he smells the smell that is no dream. Western education is an exotic plant. It is the upas tree, and it is all our fault. We brought it out from England, exactly as we brought out the ink bottles and the patterns for the chairs. We planted it, and it grew monstrous as a banyan. Now we are choked by the roots of it, spreading so thickly in this fat soil of Bengal. The speaker continues bit by bit. We builded this dome, visible and invisible, the crown of writers' buildings, as we have built and peopled the buildings. Now we have gone too far to retreat, being tied and bound with the chain of our own sins. The speech continues. we made that florid sentence. That torrent of verbiage is ours. We taught him what was constitutional, and what was un-31 constitutional in the days when Calcutta smelt Calcutta smells still. But we must listen to all that he has to say about the plurality of votes, and the thrashing of wind, and the weaving of ropes of sand. It is our own fault, absolutely. The speech ends, and there rises a grey Englishman in a black frock coat. He looks a strong man, and a worldly. Surely, he will say, yes, Lala Sahib, all this may be true talk, but there's a burra crab smell in this place, and everything must be safgarowed in a week, or the deputy commissioner will not take any notice of you in Durbar. He says nothing of the kind. This is a legislative council, where they call each other honourable sound. Sauce. The Englishman in the frock coat begs all to remember that we are discussing principles, and no consideration of the details ought to influence the verdict on the principles. Is he then like the rest? How does this strange thing come about? Perhaps these so English office fittings are responsible for the warp. The council chamber might be a London boardroom. Perhaps after long years among the pens and papers its occupants grow to think that it really is, and in this belief give resumes of the history of local self-government in England. The black frock coat, emphasizing his points 32 with his spectacles, is telling his friends how the parish was first the unit of self-government. He then explains how burgesses were elected, and in tones of deep fervor announces commissioners of sewers are elected in the same way. Whereunto all this lecture is he trying to run a motion through under cover of a cloud of words, essaying the well-known cuttlefish trick of the West. He abandons England for a while, and now we get a glimpse of the cloven hoof. In a casual reference to Hindus and Mahomedans, the Hindus will lose nothing by the complete establishment of plurality of votes. They will have the control of their own wards, as they used to have. So there is race feeling to be explained away even among these beautiful desks. Scratch the council, and you come to the old trouble. The black frock coat sits down, and a keen-eyed black-bearded Englishman rises with one hand in his pocket to explain his views on an alteration of the vote. Qualification, the idea of an amendment, seems to have just struck him. He hints that he will bring it forward later on. He is academical like the others, but not half so good a speaker. All this is dreary beyond words. Why do they talk, and talk about owners and occupiers and burgesses? 33. England and the growth of autonomous institutions, when the city, the great city, is here crying out to be cleansed. What has England to do with Calcutta's evil? And why should Englishmen be forced to wander through mazes of unprofitable argument against men who cannot understand the iniquity of dirt? A pause follows the black-bearded man's speech. Rises another native, a heavily-built Babu in a black gown and a strange headdress. A snowy white strip of cloth is thrown jaranwise over his shoulders. His voice is high and not always under control. He begins, I will try to be as brief as possible. This is ominous, by the way. In council there seems to be no necessity for a form of address. The orators plunge in medias, raise and only when they are well launched throw an occasional sir toward Sir Stuart Bailey, who sits with one leg doubled under him and a dry pen in his hand. This speaker is no good. He talks, but he says nothing, and he only knows where he is drifting to. He says, we must remember that we are legislating for the metropolis of India, and therefore we should borrow our institutions from large English towns, and not from parochial institutions. If you think for a minute, that shows a large and healthy knowledge. 34 of the history of local self-government. It also reveals the attitude of Calcutta. If the city thought less about itself as a metropolis and more as a midden state, would be better. The speaker talks patronizingly of my friend, alluding to the black frock coat. Then he flounders afresh, and his voice gallops up the gamut as he declares, and therefore that makes all the difference. He hints vaguely at threats, something to do with the Hindus and the Mahomedans, but what he means, it is difficult to discover here. However, is a sentence taken verbatim. It is not likely to appear in this form in the Calcutta papers. The black frock coat had said that if a wealthy native had 8 votes to his credit, his vanity would prompt him to go to the polling booth, because he would feel better than half a dozen Garrywans or petty traders. Fancy allowing a Garrywan to vote. He has yet to learn how to drive. Hereon the gentleman with the white cloth. Then the complaint is that influential voters will not take the trouble to vote. In my humble opinion, if that be so, adopt voting papers. That is the way to meet them in the same way the Calcutta Trades Association you abolish all plurality of votes. And that is the way to meet them lucid. Is it not up flies 35 the irresponsible voice, and delivers this statement in the election for the House of Commons plurality are allowed for persons having interest in different districts, then hopeless fog. It is a great pity that India ever heard of anybody higher than the heads of the civil service. The country appeals from the Chota to the Burra Sahib all too readily, as it is once more a whiff. The gentleman gives a defiant jerk of his shoulder cloth and sits down. Then Sir Stuart Bailey, the question before the council is etc. There is a ripple of eyes and nose, and the nose, have it whatever it may be, the black-bearded gentleman springs his amendment about the voting qualifications. A large senator in a white waistcoat and with a most genial smile rises and proceeds to smash up the amendment. Can't see the use of it, calls it, in effect, rubbish. The black frock coat rises to explain his friend's amendment, and incidentally makes a funny little slip. He is a knight, and his friend has been newly knighted. He refers to him as Mr. the Black Choga. He who spoke first of all speaks again, and talks of the sojourner who comes here for a little time, and then leaves the land. Well, it is for the Black Choga that the sojourner does come, or there would be no 36 comfy places wherein to talk about the power that can be measured by wealth, and the intellect, which, sir, I submit cannot be so measured. The amendment is lost, and trebly and quadruply lost is the listener in the name of sanity. And to preserve the tattered shirt-tails of a torn illusion, let us escape this, is the Calcutta Municipal Bill. They have been at it for several Saturdays. Last Saturday, Sir Stuart Bailey pointed out that at their present rate, they would be about 2 years in getting it through. Now they will sit till dusk unless Sir Stuart Bailey, who wants to see Lord Connemara off, puts up the black frock coat to move an adjournment. It is not good to see a government close to this, leads to the formation of blatantly self-satisfied judgments, which may be quite as wrong as the cramping system with which we have encompassed ourselves. And in the streets outside, Englishmen summarize the situation brutally. Thus the whole thing is a farce. Time is money to us. We can't stick out those everlasting speeches in the municipality. The natives choke us off. But we know that if things get too bad, the government will step in and interfere. And so we worry along somehow. Meantime, Calcutta continues to cry out for the bucket and the broom. 37. Chapter Roman 4. On the banks of the Hugli. The clocks of the city have struck 2. Where can a man get food? Calcutta is not rich in respect of dainty accommodation. You can stay your stomach at Pelitis or Bonsard's, but their shops are not to be found in Hastings Street or in the places where brokers fly to and fro in office johns, sweating and growing. Visibly rich, there must be some sort of entertainment where sailors congregate. Honest Bombay Jack supplies nothing but Burma cheroots and whiskey in liqueur glasses. But in Lal Bazar, not far from the sailors' coffee rooms, a board gives bold advertisement that officers and seamen can find good quarters in evidence. Row of neat officers and seamen are sitting on a bench by the hotel door smoking. There is an almost military likeness in their clothes. Perhaps honest Bombay Jack only keeps one kind of felt hat and one brand of suit. When Jack of the Mercantile Marine is sober, he is very sober. When he is drunk, he is but 38. Ask the river police what a lean mad Yankee can do with his nails and teeth. These gentlemen smoking on the bench are impassive, almost as Red Indians. Their attitudes are unrestrained, and they do not wear braces, nor, it would appear from the bill of fare, are they particular as to what they eat when they attend table. Dote the fare is substantial, and the regulation peg. Every house has its own depth of peg. If you will refrain from stopping Ganim to something to wonder at 3 fingers, and a trifle over seems to be the use of the officers and seamen who are talking so quietly in the doorway. One seiche has evidently finished. Long story, and so he shipped for £4.10 with a first mate's certificate, and all, and that was in a German bark. Another spits with conviction and says genially, without raising his voice, that was a hell of a ship. Who knows her? No answer from the Panchit, but a Dane or a German wants to know whether the Myra is up yet. A dry red-haired man gives her exact position in the river. How in the world can he know? And the probable hour of her arrival. The grave debate drifts into a discussion of a recent river accident, whereby a big steamer was damaged and had to put back and discharge cargo a burly 39 gentleman who is taking a constitutional down Lal Bazar strolls up and says, "I tell you she fouled her own chain with her own forefoot. Have you seen the plates? No then, how the can any like you say what it well was he passes on having delivered his highly flavored opinion without heat or passion. No one seems to resent the expletives. Let us get down to the river and see this stamp of men more thoroughly. Clark Russell has told us that their lives are hard enough in all conscience. What are their pleasures and diversions? The port office, where live the gentlemen who make improvements in the port of Calcutta, ought to supply information. It stands large and fair, and built in an orientalized manner after the Italians at the corner of Fairley Place upon the Great Strand Road, and a continual clamor of traffic by land and by sea goes up throughout the day and far into the night against its windows. This is a place to enter more reverently than the Bengal Legislative Council, for it houses the direction of the uncertain. Hugley down to the Sandheads owns enormous wealth and spends huge sums on the frontaging of river banks, the expansion of jetties, and the manufacture of docks, costing 240 lakhs of rupees. 2 million tons of seagoing shippage yearly find their way up and down the river by the guidance of the port office, and the men of the port office know more than it is good for men to hold in their heads. They can, without reference to telegraphic bulletins, give the position of all the big steamers coming up or going down from the Hugley to the sea day by day, with their tonnage, the names of their captains, and the nature of their cargo. Looking out from the veranda of their offices over a lancer regiment of masts, they can declare truthfully the name of every ship within eyescope, with the day and hour when she will depart. In a room at the bottom of the building lounge, big men carefully dressed now, there is a type of face which belongs almost exclusively to Bengal cavalry officers majors for choice. Everybody knows the bronzed, black-moustached, clear-speaking native cavalry officer. He exists unnaturally in novels, and naturally on the frontier. These men in the big room have its cast of face so strongly marked that one marvels what officers are doing by the river. Have they come to book passengers for home? Those men, they're a pilot. Some of them draw between 2,000 and 3,000 rupees a 41 month. They are responsible for £500,000 worth of cargo. Sometimes they certainly are men, and they carry themselves as such. They confer together by twos and threes and appeal frequently to shipping lists. Isn't a pilot a man who always wears a pea-jacket and shouts through a speaking trumpet? Well, you can ask those gentlemen if you like. You've got your notions from home. Pilots, hours errant, the kind exactly. They are a picked service, as carefully weeded as the Indian Roman 153. Some of them have brothers in it, and some belong to the old Indian army families, but they are not all equally well paid. The Calcutta papers sometimes echo the groans of the junior pilots who are not allowed the handling of ships over a certain tonnage, as it is yearly growing cheaper to build one big steamer than two little ones. These juniors are crowded out, and while the seniors get their thousands, some of the youngsters make at the end of 1 month exactly 30 rupees. This is a grievance with them, and it seems well-founded. In the flats above the pilot's room are hushed and chamber-like offices, all sumptuously fitted, where Englishmen write and telephone and telegraph, and deft babus forever draw maps of the shifting Hugley. Any hope of understand 42ing the work of the port commissioners is thoroughly dashed by being taken through the port maps of a quarter of a century past. Men have played with the Hugley as children play with a gutty runnel, and in return the Hugley once rose and played with men and ships till the Strand Road was littered with the raffle and the carcasses of big ships. There are photos on the walls of the cyclone of '64, when the Thunder came inland and sat upon an American bark, obstructing all the traffic. Very curious are these photos, and almost impossible to believe. How can a big, strong steamer have her 3 masts raised to deck level? How can a heavy country boat be pitched on to the poop of a high-walled liner? And how can the side be bodily torn out of a ship? The photos say that all these things are possible, and men aver that a cyclone may come again and scatter the craft like chaff. Outside the port office are the export and import sheds, buildings that can hold a ship's cargo apiece, all standing on reclaimed ground. Here be several strong smells, a mass of railway lines, and a multitude of men. Do you see where that trolley is standing behind the big P and O berth? In that place, as nearly as may be the Gavenpoor went down about 20 years ago and began to shift out, but that 43 is solid ground she sank there, and the next tide made a scour hole on one side of her, the returning tide knocked her into it, then the mud made up behind her next tide, the business was repeated always the scour hole in the mud, and the filling up behind her, so she rolled and was pushed out and out, until she got in the way of the shipping right out yonder, and we had to blow her up. When a ship sinks in mud or quicksand, she regularly digs her own grave, and wriggles herself into it deeper and deeper, till she reaches moderately solid stuff. Then she sticks horrible idea, is it not to go down and down with each tide into the foul ugly mud. Close to the port offices is the shipping office, where the captains engage their crews. The men must produce their discharges from their last ships in the presence of the shipping master, or as they call him, the deputy shipping. He passes them as correct, after having satisfied himself that they are not deserters from other ships, and they then sign articles for the voyage. This is the ceremony, beginning with the dearly beloved of the crew-hunting captain, down to the amazement of the identified deserter. There is a dingy building next door to the sailor's home, at whose 44 gates stand the cast-ups of all the seas in all manner of raiment. There are seedy boys, Bombay sarangs, and Madras fishermen of the salt villages, Malays, who insist upon marrying native women, grow jealous, and run amok, Malay Hindus, Hindu Malayites, Burmese Burmaites, Burmanativites, Italians with gold earrings, and a thirst for gambling Yankees of all the states, with mulattoes and pure buckniggers, red and rough Danes, Singhalese Cornish boys, who seem fresh taken from the Plowdale cornstalks from colonial ships, where they got £4.10 a month, as seamen, tun-bellied Germans, Cockney mates, keeping a little aloof from the crowd, and talking in knots together, unmistakable Tommies who have tumbled into seafaring life, by some mistake, cockatoo-tufted Welshmen, spitting and swearing like cats, broken-down loafers, grey-headed, penniless and pitiful swaggering boys, and very quiet men with gashes and cuts on their faces. It is an ethnological museum where all the specimens are playing comedies and tragedies. The head of it all is the deputy shipping, and he sits supported by an English policeman, whose fists are knobby, in a great chair of state. The deputy shipping knows all the iniquity of the riverside, all the ship's 45, all the captains, and a fair amount of the men. He is fenced off from the crowd by strong wooden railing, behind which are gathered those who stand and wait, the unemployed of the mercantile marine. They have had their spree per devil sand. Now they will go to sea again on as low a wage as £3.10 a month, to fetch up at the end in some Shanghai stew or San Francisco hell. They have turned their backs on the seductions of the Howrah boarding houses and the delights of Kalutola. If fate will, nightingales will know them no more for a season, and their successors may paint Kalinga Bazar vermilion. But what captain will take some of these battered, shattered wrecks, whose hands shake and whose eyes are red? Enters suddenly a bearded captain who has made his selection from the crowd on a previous day, and now wants to get his men past. He is not fastidious in his choice. His 11 seem a tough lot for such a mild-eyed, civil-spoken man to manage. But the captain in the shipping office and the captain on the ship are two different things. He brings his crew up to the deputy shipping's bar, and hands in their greasy, tattered discharges. But the heart of the deputy shipping is hot within him. B-46 cause 2 days ago, a Howrah crimp stole a whole crew from a down-dropping ship, insomuch that the captain had to come back and whip up a new crew at 1 o'clock in the day. Evil will it be if the deputy shipping finds one of these bounty-jumpers in the chosen crew of the Blenkidoon, let us say. The deputy shipping tells the story with heat. I didn't know they did such things in Calcutta. Says the captain, do such things, they'd steal the eyeteeth out of your head. Their captain, he picks up a discharge and calls for Michael Donnelly, who is a loosened, vicious-looking Irish-American who chews stand-up man, stand-up Michael. Donnelly wants to lean against the desk, and the English policeman won't have it. What was your last ship, Fairy Queen? When did you leave her? Bout 11 days. Captain's name? Flahy Thatlow. Do next man? Jules Anderson. Jules Anderson is a Dane. His statements tally with the discharge certificate of the United States. As the eagle attesteth, he is passed, and falls back Slivy the Englishman, and David, a huge plum-colored Negro, who ships as cook, are also passed. Then comes Bassompra, a little Italian, who speaks English. What's your last ship 3047 Nan? No. After that German bark, Bassompra does not look happy. When did she sail? About 3 weeks ago. What's her name? Haiti. You deserted from her? Yes. But she's left port. The deputy shipping runs rapidly through a shipping list, throws it down. With a bang. Twant do. No German bark Haiti here for 3 months. How do I know? You don't belong to the Jackson's crew. Captain, I am afraid y'all have to ship another man. He must stand over, take the rest away, and make him sign. The bead-eyed Bassompra seems to have lost his chance of a voyage, and his case will be inquired into. The captain departs with his men, and they sign articles for the voyage, while the deputy shipping tells strange tales of the sailorman's life. They'll quit a good ship for the sake of a spree, and catch on again at £3.10. And by Jove, they'll let their skippers pay at 10 rupees to the sovereign poor beggars as soon as the money's gone. They'll ship, but not before everyone under rank of captain engages here. The competition makes first mates ship sometimes for £5 or as low as £4.10 a month. The gentleman in the boarding house was right. You see, a first mate's wages are £7.10 or £8.48, and foreign captains ship for £12 a month, and bring their own small stores of everything, that is to say, except beef, peas, flour, coffee, and molasses. These things are not pleasant to listen to, while the hungried men in the bad clothes lounge and scratch and loaf behind the railing. What comes to them in the end? They die, it seems, though that is not altogether strange. They die at sea in strange and horrible ways. They die, a few of them, in the Quintals being lost and suffocated in the great sink of Calcutta. They die in strange places by the waterside, and the Hughley takes them away under the mooring chains and the buoys, and casts them up on the sands below. If the river police have missed the capture, they sail the sea because they must live, and there is no end to their toil. Very, very few find haven of any kind, and the earth, whose ways they do not understand, is cruel to them when they walk upon it to drink and be merry after the manner of beasts. Jack ashore is a pretty thing when he is in a book, or in the blue jacket of the Navy mercantile. Jack is not so lovely. Later on we will see where his sprees lead him. From this eyrie in the warm night, one hears the heart of Calcutta beating. Chapter Roman 5, with the Calcutta police. The city was of night, perchance of death, but certainly of night. The city of dreadful night. In the beginning, the police were responsible, they said, in a patronizing way, that merely as a matter of convenience, they would prefer to take a wanderer round the great city themselves sooner than let him contract a broken head on his own account in the slums. They said that there were places where a white man, unsupported by the arm of the law, would be robbed and mobbed, and that there were other places where drunken seamen would make it very unpleasant for him. There was a night fixed for the patrol, but apologies were offered beforehand for the comparative insignificance of the tour. Come up to the fire lookout in the first place, and then you'll be able to see the city. This was at No. 22 Lal Bazar, which is the 50 headquarters of the Calcutta police, the center of the great web of telephone wires, where justice sits all day and all night looking after 1 million people, and a floating population of 100,000, but her work shall be dealt with later. On the fire lookout is a little sentry box on the top of the three-storied police offices. Here a native watchman waits, always ready to give warning to the brigade below if the smoke rises by day or the flames by night in any ward of the city. From this eyrie in the warm night, one hears the heart of Calcutta beating northward. The city stretches away 3 long miles, with 3 more miles of suburbs beyond to Dum Dum and Barrackpore. The lamplit dusk on this side is full of noises and shouts and smells. Close to the police office, jovial mariners at the sailors' coffee shop are roaring hymns southerly. The city's confused lights give place to the orderly lamprows of the Maidan and Chowringhi, where the respectabilities live, and the police have very little to do. From the east goes up to the sky the clamor of Sealdah, the rumble of the trams, and the voices of old Beau Bazar chaffering and making merry. Westward are the business quarters, hushed now, the lamps of the shipping on the river, and the twinkling lights on the Hara 51 side. It is a wonderful sight. Thighs Pisgah view of a huge city resting after the labors of the day. Does the noise of traffic go on all through the hot weather? Of course, the hot months are the busiest in the year, and money's tightest. You should see the brokers cutting about at that season. Calcutta can't stop, my dear. So what happens then? Nothing happens. The death rate goes up a little. That's all. Even in February, the weather would up country be called muggy and stifling. But Calcutta is convinced that it is her cold season. The noises of the city grow perceptibly. It is the night side of Calcutta waking up and going abroad. Jack in the sailor's coffee shop is singing joyously, "Shall we gather at the river, the beautiful, the river?" What an incongruity there is about his selections, however, that it amuses before it shocks the listeners, is not to be doubted. An Englishman far from his native land is liable to become careless, and it would be remarkable if he did otherwise. In ill-smelling Calcutta, there is a clatter of hoofs in the courtyard. Below, some of the mounted police have come in from somewhere or other out of the great darkness. A clogdance of iron hoofs follows, and an Englishman's voice is heard soothing an agitated 52 horse who seems to be standing on his hind legs. Some of the mounted police are going out into the great darkness. What's on walk round at Government House? The reserve men are being formed up below. They're calling the roll. The reserve men are all English, and big English at that. They form up and tramp out of the courtyard to line Government Place, and see that Mrs. Lollipop's brougham does not get smashed up by Sardar Chuckabuddy Bahadur's lumbering Seaspring barouche. With the two raw whalers, very military men, are the Calcutta European police in their setup, and he who knows their composition knows some startling stories of gentlemen rankers and the like. They are, despite the wearing climate they work in, and the wearing work they do, as fine 50 of Englishmen as you shall find east of Suez. Listen for a moment from the fire, look out to the voices of the night, and you will see why they must be so. 2,000 sailors of 50 nationalities are adrift in Calcutta every Sunday, and of these perhaps 200 are distinctly the worse for liquor. There is a mild row going on even now somewhere at the back of Beau Bazar, which at nightfall fills with sailormen who have a wonderful gift of falling foul. 53 of the native population, to keep the Queen's peace, is of course only a small portion of police duty, but it is trying the burly president of the lockup for European drunks. Calcutta Central Lockup is worth seeing. Graduates in a sprained thumb just now and has to do his work left-handed in consequence, but his left hand is a marvelously persuasive one, and when on duty his sleeves are turned up to the shoulder that the jovial mariner may see that there is no deception. The president's labors are handicapped in that the road of sin to the lockup runs through a grimy little garden. Brick paths are worn deep with the tread of many drunken feet, where a man can give a great deal of trouble by sticking his toes into the ground and getting mixed up with the shrubs. A straight run in would be much more convenient both for the president and the drunk, generally speaking, and here police experience is pretty much the same all over the civilized world. A woman drunk is a good deal worse than a man drunk. She scratches and bites like a Chinaman and swears like several fiends. Strange people may be unearthed in the lockups. Here is a perfectly true story, not 3 weeks old. A visitor, an unofficial one, wandered into the native side of the spacious AC-54 accommodation provided for those who have gone or done wrong. A wild-eyed Babu rose from the fixed charpai and said in the best of English, "Good morning, sir, good morning. Who are you, and what are you in for?" Then the Babu in one breath, "I would have you know that I do not go to prison as a criminal, but as a reformer." You've read The Vicar of Wakefield? Yees, well, I am the Vicar of Bengal, at least that's what I call myself. The visitor collapsed. He had not nerve enough to continue the conversation. Then said the voice of the authority, "He's down in connection with a cheating case at Serampore, maybe shamming, but he'll be looked to in time." The best place to hear about the police is the fire. Lookout from that eerie one can see how difficult must be the work of control over the great growling beast of a city. By all means, let us abuse the police, but let us see what the poor wretches have to do with their 3,000 natives and 100 Englishmen from Howrah and Bawley and the other suburbs. At least 100,000 people come into Calcutta for the day and leave at night. Also, Chandranagore is handy for the fugitive lawbreaker who can enter in the evening and get 55 away before the noon of the next day, having marked his house and broken into it. But how can the prevalent offense be housebreaking in a place like this? Easily enough. When you've seen a little of the city, you'll see natives sleep and lie about all over the place, and whole quarters are just so many rabbit warrens. Wait till you see the Matua Bazar. Well, besides the petty theft and burglary, we have heavy cases of forgery and fraud that leave us with our wits pitted against a Bengalis. When a Bengali criminal is working a fraud of the sort he loves, he is about the cleverest soul you could wish for. He gives us cases a year long to unravel. Then there are the murders in the low house. Very curious things. They are Yaul see the house, where Sheikh Babu was murdered presently, and Yaul. Understand the Burra Bazar and Jora Bagan sections are the two worst ones for heavy cases, but Kalutola is the most aggravating. There's Kalutola over yonder that patch of darkness. Beyond the lights, that section is full of tuppenny halfpenny petty cases that keep the men up all night and make him swear Yaul see Kalutola, and then perhaps Yaul. Understand Baman Basti is the quietest of all, and Lal Bazar and Bo Bazar, as you can see 56 for yourself, are the rowdiest. You've no notion what the natives come to the Thanas, for a knocker will come in and want a summons against his master for refusing him half an hour's chuti. I suppose it does seem rather revolutionary to an up-country man, but they try to do it here. Now wait a minute before we go down into the city and see the fire brigade. Turned out business is slack with them just now, but you time and see an order is given, and a bell strikes softly thrice. There is an orderly rush of men, the click of a bolt, a red fire engine spitting and swearing with the sparks flying from the furnace, is dragged. Out of its shelter, a huge brake, which holds supplementary hoses, men and hatchets, follows, and a hostcart is the third on the list. The men push the heavy things about as though they were pith toys. 5 horses appear too, are shot into the fire engine. 2 monsters, the Sainto the brake, and the 5th, a powerful beast warranted to trot 14 miles an hour, backs into the hostcart shafts. The men clamber up. Someone says softly, "Already there," and with an angry whistle, the fire engine, followed by the other 2, flies out into Lal Bazar, the sparks trailing behind. Time 1 min 46. They'll find out it's a false alarm and come 57 back again in 5 minutes, why, because there will be no constables on the road to give them the direction of the fire, and because the driver wasn't told the ward of the outbreak when he went out. Do you mean to say that you can, from this absurd pigeon loft, locate the wards in the night time? Of course. What would be the good of a lookout if the man couldn't tell where the fire was? But it's all pitchy black, and the lights are so confusing. Ha ha, Yaul be more confused. In 10 minutes Yaul have lost your way, as you never lost it before. You're going to go round Bo Bazar section. And the Lord have mercy on my soul, Calcutta, the darker portion of it, does not look an inviting place to dive into at night. 58. Chapter Romans 6, the city of dreadful night. And since they cannot spend or use aright the little time here given them in trust, but lavish it in weary undelight of foolish toil and trouble, strife and lust, they naturally claimeth to inherit the everlasting futureth at their merit, may have full scope as surely is most just. The city of dreadful night. The difficulty is to prevent this account from growing steadily unwholesome, but one cannot rake through a big city without encountering muck. The police kept their word in 5 short minutes, as they had prophesied. Their charge was lost, as he had never been lost before. Where are we now? Somewhere off the Chitpur road, but you wouldn't understand if you were told. Follow now and step. Pretty much where we step there's a good deal of filth hereabouts. The thick greasy night shuts in everything. 59. We have gone beyond the ancestral houses of the Gozes of the Boses, beyond the lamps, the smells, and the crowd of Chitpur road, and have come to a great wilderness of packed house, just such mysterious conspiring tenements as Dickens would have loved. There is no breath of breeze here, and the air is perceptibly warmer. There is little regularity in the drift, and the utmost niggardliness in the spacing of what, for want of a better name, we must call the streets, if Calcutta keeps such luxuries as commissioners of sewers and paving. They die before they reach this place. The air is heavy with a faint sour stench, essence of long-neglected abomination sand. It cannot escape from among the tall 3-storied houses. This, my dear sir, is a perfectly respectable quarter, as quarters go. That house at the head of the alley, with the elaborate stuckwork round the top of the door, was built long ago by a celebrated midwife. Great people used to live here once. Now it's the aha. Look out for that carriage. A big mail phaeton crashes out of the darkness, and recklessly driven, disappears. The wonder is how it ever got into this maze of narrow streets where nobody seems to be moving, and where the dull throbbing of the city's life only comes faintly and by snatches. Now it's the 60 what St. John's Wood of Calcutta, the rich babus that fit and belong to one of them. Well, it's not much of a place to look at. Don't judge By appearances about here live the women who have beggared kings. We aren't going to let you down into unadulterated vice. All at once you must see it first, with the gilding on and mind, that rotten board. Stand at the bottom of a lift, and look upward, then you will get both the size and the design of the tiny courtyard round which one of these big dark houses is built. The central square may be perhaps 10 feet every way, but the balconies that run inside it overhang and seem to cut away half the available space to reach the square. A man must go round many corners down a covereden way, and up and down 2 or 3 baffling and confused steps. There are no lamps to guide, and the janitors of the establishment seem to be compelled to sleep in the passages. The central square, the patio, or whatever it must be called, reeks with the faint sour smell, which finds its way impartially into every room. Now you will understand, say the police kindly, as their charge blunders shin-first into a well-dark winding staircase, that these are not the sort of places. A glare of light on the stairhead, a clink of innumerable bangles, a rustle of much fine gauze, and the dainty iniquity stands revealed. 61. To visit alone, who wants to of all the disgusting, inaccessible dens. Holy Cupid, what's this? A glare of light on the stairhead, a clink of innumerable bangles, a rustle of much fine gauze, and the dainty iniquity stands revealed. Blazing, literally blazing with jewelry from head to foot. Take one of the fairest miniatures that the Delhi painters draw and multiply it by 10. Throw in one of Angelica Kauffman's best portraits, and add anything that you can think of from Beckford to Lalla Rookh, and you will still fall short of the merits of that perfect face, for an instant even. Grim professional gravity of the police is relaxed in the presence of the dainty iniquity, with the gems who so prettily invites everyone to be seated, and proffers such refreshments, as she conceives the palates of the barbarians would prefer. Her Abigails are only 1 degree less gorgeous than she. Half a lakh or 50,000 pounds, whether it is easier to credit the latter statement than the former. Rare disposed upon her little body, each hand carries 5 jeweled rings which are connected by golden chains to a great jeweled boss of gold. In the center of the back of the hand, earrings weighted with emeralds and pearls, diamond nose rings, and how many other 6,200 articles make up the list of adornments. English furniture of a gorgeous and gimcrack kind, unlimited chandeliers, and a collection of atrocious continental print, something, but not altogether like the glazed plaques on bonbon boxes scattered about the house, and on every landing lit us trust. This is a mistakenly squats or loafs, a Bengali who can talk English with unholy fluency. The recurrence suggests minder grim possibility of the affectation of excessive virtue, by day tempered with the sort of unwholesome enjoyment, after dusk thighs loafing and lobbying and chattering and smoking. And unless the bottles lie tippling among the full-tongued handmaidens of the dainty iniquity, how many men follow this double deleterious sort of life? The police are discreetly dumb. Now don't go talking about domiciliary visits. Just because this one happens to be a pretty woman, we've got to know these creatures. They make the rich man and the poor spend their money. And when a man can't get money for honestly, he comes under our notice. Now do you see, if there was any domiciliary visit about it, the whole houseful would be hidden past our finding as soon as we turned up in the courtyard. Were friends to a certain 63 extent, and indeed it seemed no difficult thing to be friends to any extent with the dainty iniquity, who was so surpassingly different from all that experience taught of the beauty of the East. Here was the face from which a man could write Lalla Rookhs by the dozen and believe every work that he wrote. Hers was the beauty that Byron sang of when he wrote, "Remember, if you come here alone, the chances are that you'll be clubbed or stuck, or anyhow mobbed. You'll understand that this part of the world is shut to Europeans. Absolutely mind the steps, and follow on. The vision dies out in the smells and gross darkness of the night, in evil time-written brickwork, and another wilderness of shoot-up houses, wherein it seems that people do continually and feebly strum stringed instruments of a plaintive and wailsome nature. Follows after another plunge into a passage of a courtyard, and up a staircase, the apparition of a fat vice, in whom is no sort of romance nor beauty, but unlimited coarse humor. She too is studded with jewels, and her house is even finer than the house of the other, and more infested with the extraordinary men who speak such good English, and are so deferential. 64 To the police, the fat vice has been a great leader of fashion in her day, and stripped a Zemindar Raja to his last acre, insomuch that he ended in the House of Correction for a theft committed for her sake. Native opinion has it that she is a monstrous well-preserved woman on this point, as on some others the races will agree to differ. The scene changes suddenly as a slide in a magic lantern dainty iniquity, and fat vice slide away on a roll of streets and alleys, each more squalid than its predecessor. We are somewhere at the back of the Matua Bazaar, well in the heart of the city. There are no houses here, nothing but acres and acres, it seems, of foul wattelandab huts, any one of which would be a disgrace to a frontier village. The whole arrangement is a neatly contrived germ and fire trap, reflecting great credit upon the Calcutta municipality. What happens when these pigsties catch fire? They're built up again, say the police, as though this were the natural order of things. Land is immensely valuable here, all the more reason then to turn several horsemen loose into the city, with instructions to make barracks for the population that cannot find room in the huts and sleeps in the open 65 ways, cherishing dogs. And worse, much worse, in its unwashen bosom, here is a licensed coffee shop. This is where your knockers go for amusement, and to see notches, there is a huge chapa shed, ingeniously ornamented with insecure kerosene lamps, and crammed with Garrywan's kitmatkers, small storekeepers, and the like. Never a sign of a European. Why? Because if an Englishman messed about here, he'd get into trouble. Men don't come here unless they're drunk, or have lost their way. The Garrywants have the privilege of voting. Have they not looked peaceful enough, as they squat on tables, or crowd by the doors to watch the notch that is going forward? 5 pitiful draggle-tails are huddled together on a bench under one of the lamps, while the 6th is squirming and shrieking before the impassive crowd. She sings of love as understood by the Oriental, love that dries the heart and consumes the liver. In this place, the words that would look so well on paper have an evil and ghastly significance. The Garrywans stare or sup tumblers and cups of a filthy decoction, and the Conchini howls with renewed vigor in the presence of the police. Where the dainty iniquity was hung with gold and gems, she is trapped with pewter and glass. 66. And where there was heavy embroidery on the fat vice's dress, defaced stamped tinsel faithfully reduplicates the pattern on the tawdry robes of the Conchini. So you see, if one cares to moralize, they are sisters of the same class. 2 or 3 men blessed with uneasy consciences have quietly slipped out of the coffee shop into the mazes of the huts beyond. The police laugh, and those nearest in the crowd laugh applausively, as in duty bound. Perhaps the rabbits grin uneasily when the ferret lands at the bottom of the burrow and begins to clear the warren. The shandu shops shut up at 6, so y'all have to see opium smoking before dark someday. No, you won't, though the detective nose sniffs, and the detective body makes for a half-open door of a hut, whence floats the fragrance of the black smoke. Those of the inhabitants who are able to stand promptly clear out. They have no love for the police, and there remain only 4 men lying down, and one standing up. This latter has a pet mongoose coiled round his neck. He speaks English fluently. Yes, he has no fear. It was a private smoking party and no business tonight. Show how you smoke opium. Aha, you 67 want to see? Very good, I show. Hiya yow. Kicks a man on the floor. Show how opium smoking. The kiki grunts lazily and turns on his elbow, the mongoose always keeping to the man's neck, erects every hair of its body like an angry cat, and chatters in its owner's ear. The lamp for the opium pipe is the only one in the room, and lights a scene as wild as anything in the witches' revel. The mongoose, acting as the familiar spirit, a voice from the ground says in tones of infinite weariness, "You take a film." So a long, long pause, and another kick from the man possessed of the devil. Mongoose, you take a film. He takes a pellet of the black treacly stuff on the end of a knitting needle and light a film. He plunges the pellet into the nightlight, where it swells and fumes greasily, and then you put it in your pipe. The smoking pellet is jammed into the tiny bowl of thick bamboo-stemmed pipe, and all speech ceases except the unearthly noise of the mongoose. The man on the ground is sucking at his pipe, and when the smoking pellet has ceased to smoke, will be halfway to Nibhan. Now you go, says the man with the mongoose. I am going smoke. The hut door closes upon a red-lit view of huddled legs and bodies. 68. And the man with the mongoose sinking on to his knees, his head bowed forward, and the little hairy devil chattering on the nape of his neck. After this, the fetid night air seems almost cool, for the hut is as hot as a furnace. See the Pukka Shandu shops in full blast. Tomorrow, now for Kalutola, come through the huts. There is no decoration about this vice. The huts now gave place to houses very tall and spacious and very dark, but for the narrowness of the streets, we might have stumbled upon Chowringhi in the dark. An hour and a half has passed, and up to this time, we have not crossed our trail. Once you might knock about the city for a night, and never cross the same line. Recollect, Calcutta isn't one of your pokey up-country cities of a lakh and a half of people. How long does it take to know it then? About a lifetime. And even then, some of the streets puzzle you. How much has the head of a ward to know every house in his ward? If he can, who owns it? What sort of character the inhabitants are? Who are their friends who go out and in, who loaf about the place at night? And so on and so on. And he knows all this by night as well as by day. 69, of course. Why shouldn't he? No reason in the world, only it's pitchy black just now, and I'd like to see where this alley is going to end. Round the corner, beyond that dead wall, there's a lamp. There, then you'll be able to see a shadow flits out of a gully and disappears. Who's that? Sergeant of police, just to see where we're going in case of accidents. Another shadow staggers into the darkness. Who's that? Man from the fort or a sailor from the ships? I couldn't quite see. The police open a shut door in a high wall and stumble unceremoniously among a gang of women cooking their food. The floor is of beaten earth. The steps that lead into the upper stories are unspeakably grimy, and the heat is the heat of April. The women rise hastily, and the light of the bull's eye for the police have now lighted a lantern in regular rounds of London fashion shows. 6 bleared face sewn, a half native, half Chinese one, and the others Bengali. There are no men here. They cry the house is empty. Then they grin and jabber and chew pan and spit and hurry up the steps into the darkness. A range of 3 big rooms has been knocked into one here, and there is some sort of arrangement of mats, but an average countrybrid is more 70 sumptuously accommodated. In an Englishman's stable, a home horse would snort at the accommodation. Nice sort of place, isn't it? Say the police genially. This is where the sailors get robbed and drunk. They must be blind drunk before they come. Na sailor men. A chorus. The women catching at the one word. They understand. Arg on. The police take no notice, but tramp down the big room with the mat loose boxes. A woman is shivering in one of these. What's the matter? Fever. Seek, very, very seek. She huddles herself into a heap on the charpie and groans. A tiny pitch-black closet opens out of the long room, and into this the police plunge. Hullo, what's here? Down flashes the lantern, and a white hand with black nails comes out of the gloom. Somebody is asleep or drunk in the cot. The ring of lantern light travels slowly up and down the body. A sailor from the ships. He's got his dungarees on. Hell, be robbed before the morning, most likely. The man is sleeping like a little child, both arms thrown over his head, and he is not unhandsome. He is shoeless, and there are huge holes in his stockings. He is a pure 71 blooded white, and carries the flush of innocent sleep on his cheeks. The light is turned off, and the police depart, while the woman in the loose box shivers and moans that she is sick, very, very sick. It is not surprising. 72. Chapter Romans 7. Deeper and deeper still. I built myself a lordly pleasure house, wherein at ease for I to dwell. I said, O soul, make merry and carouse. Dear sofa, all is well. The palace of art. And where next I don't like Kalutola, the police and their charge are standing in the interminable waste of houses under the starlight, to the lowest sink of all. Say the police, after the manner of Virgil, when he took the Italian with the indigestion to look at the frozen sinners. And where's that? Somewhere about here, but you wouldn't know if you were told. They laid, and they laid, and they laid, and they cease not from leading till they come to the last circle of the inferno, a long, long, winding, quiet road. There you are, you can see for yourself. But there is nothing to be seen. On one side, a house gaunt and dark, naked, and devoid of furniture. On the other, low, mean stalls, 73 lighted, and with shamelessly open doors, wherein women stand and lounge and mutter and whisper one to another. There is a hush here, or at least the busy silence of an officer of counting house in working hours. One look down the street is sufficient. Laid on gentlemen of the Calcutta police, let us escape from the lines of open doors, the flaring lamps within, the glimpses of the tawdry toiletables, adorned with little plaster dogs, glass balls from Christmas trees. And for religion must not be despised, though women be fallen pictures of the saints and statuettes of the Virgin. The street is a long one, and other streets, full of the same pitiful wares, branch off from it. Why are they so quiet? Why don't they make a row and sing and shout, and so on? Why should they, poor devils, say the police, and fall to telling tales of horror of women decoyed into palkis and shot into this trap, then other tales that shatter one's belief in all things and folk of good repute? How can you police have faith in humanity? That's because you're seeing it all in a lump for the first time. And it's not nice. That way makes a man jump rather, doesn't it? But recollect you've asked for the worst places. And you can't complain. Who's complaining? 74 bring on your atrocities. Isn't that a European woman at that door? Yes, Mrs. D, widow of a soldier, mother of 7 children, 9. If you please, and good evening to you, shrills Mrs. D, leaning against the doorpost, her arms folded on her bosom. She is a rather pretty, slightly made Eurasian, and whatever shame she may have owned, she has long since cast behind her a shapeless, burminative trot, with high cheekbones and mouth, like a shark calls Mrs. D Mem Sahib. The word jars unspeakably. Her life is a matter between herself and her maker, but in that sheth widow of a soldier of the Queen has stooped to this common foulness. In the face of the city, she has offended against the white race. The police fail to fall in with this righteous indignation. Morthy laugh at it, out of the wealth of their unholy knowledge. You're from up country, and of course you don't understand. There are any amount of that lot in the city. Then the secret of the insolence of Calcutta is made plain. Small wonder the natives fail to respect the sahibs, seeing what they see and knowing what they know. In the good old days, the honorable, the directors deported him or her who misbehaved grossly, and the white man preserved his is at 75. He may have been a ruffian, but he was a ruffian on a large scale. He did not sink in the presence of the people. The natives are quite right to take the wall of the sahib, who has been at great pains to prove that he is of the same flesh and blood. All this time, Mrs. D stands on the threshold of her room and looks upon the men with unabashed eyes. If the spirit of that English soldier who married her long ago by the forms of the English church be now flitting batwise above the roofs, how singularly pleased and proud it must be. Mrs. D is a lady with a story. She is not averse to telling it. What was a hemmed case in which you were concerned, Mrs. D? They said id poisoned my husband by putting something into his drinking water. This is interesting. How much modesty has this creature? Let us see. And did you twasn't proved, says Mrs. D with a laugh, a pleasant ladylike laugh that does infinite credit to her education and upbringing. Worthy Mrs. D, it would pay a novelist, a French one, let us say, pick you out of the stews and make you talk. The police move forward into a region of Mrs. D.'s. This is horrible, but they are used to it, and evidently consider indignation affectation. Everywhere are the empty houses and the babbling women in print gowns. The clocks in the city are close upon midnight, but the police show no signs of stopping. They plunge hither and thither like wreckers into the surf, and each plunge brings up a sample of misery, filth, and woe. Sheikh Babu was murdered just here, they say, pulling up in one of the most troublesome houses in the ward. It would never do to appear ignorant of the murder of Sheikh Babu. I only wonder that more arrant killed the houses with their breakneck staircases, their 100 corners, low roofs, hidden courtyards, and winding passages seem specially built for crime of every kind. A woman Eurasian rises to a sitting position on a board charpoy and blinks sleepily at the police. Then she throws herself down with a grunt. What's the matter with you? I live in Marcus Lane, Anthize with intense gravity. I'm so drunk. She has a rather striking gypsy-like face, but her language might be improved. Come along, say the police. Well, head back to Bentinck Street and put you on the road to the Great Eastern. They walk long and steadily, and the talk falls on gambling. 77 hells, you ought to see our men rush one of them. They like the work natives, of course. When we've marked a hell down, we post men at the entrances and carry it. Sometimes the Chinese bite, but as a rule they fight fair. It's a pity we hadn't a hell to show you. Let's go in Heratha. Maybe something forward here. Appears to be in the heart of a Chinese quarter. For the pigtails, though they ever go to Badare, scuttling about the streets, never go into a Chinese place alone, say the police, and swing open a postern gate. In a strong green door 2 Chinamen appear. What are we going to see? Japanese? No, we aren't. By Jove, catch that Chinaman quick. The pigtail is trying to double back across a courtyard into an inner chamber, but a large hand on his shoulder spins him round and puts him in rear of the line of advancing Englishmen who are, be it observed, making a fair amount of noise with their boots. A second door is thrown open, and the visitors advance into a large square room blazing with gas. Here 13 pigtails, deaf and blind to the outer world, are bending over a table. The captured Chinaman dodges uneasily in the rear of the procession. 5 to 15 seconds past the Englishmen standing in the full light. 78, less than 3 paces from the absorbed gang. who see nothing then burly Superintendent Lamb brings down his hand on his thigh with a crack like a pistol shot, and shouts "How do John?" follows a frantic rush of scared celestials almost tumbling over each other in their anxiety to get clear gudgeon before the rush of the pike, are nothing to John Chinaman detected in the act of gambling. One pigtail scoops up a pile of copper money, another a Chinaware soup bowl, and only a little mound of accusing cowries remains on the white matting that covers the table. In less than half a minute, two facts are forcibly brought home to the visitor. First, that a pigtail is largely composed of silk and rasps the palm of the hand as it slides through, and secondly, that the forearm of a Chinaman is surprisingly muscular and well-developed. What's going to be done? Nothing. There are only three of us, and all the ringleaders would get away. Look at the doors. We've got him safe any time we want to catch him. If this little visit doesn't make him shift their quarters. Hi, John No Pigeon. Tonight show how you Mackie play that fat youngster. There is our informer. Half the pigtails have fled into the darkness, but the remainder assured, and trebly assured 79, that the police really mean no pigeon. Return to the table and stand round, while the croupier proceeds to manipulate the cowries, the little curved slip of bamboo, and the soup bowl. They never gamble, these innocents. They only come to look on and smoke opium in the next room. Yet, as the game progresses, their eyes light up, and one by one they drop in to deposit their pice on odd or eventh number of the cowries that are covered and left uncovered by the little soup bowl. Mython is the name of the amusement, and whatever may be its demerits, it is clean. The police look on while their charge plays, and loots a parchment-skinned horrorone of swift struldbrugs strayed from Laputauf. The enormous sum of 2 honors, the return of this wealth, doubled, sets the loser beating his forehead against the table from sheer gratitude. Most immoral game, this. A man might drop 5 whole rupees if he began playing at sundown and kept it up all night. Don't you ever play whist? Occasionally. Now, we didn't bring you round to make fun of this department. A man can lose as much as ever he likes, and he can fight as well. And if he loses all his money, he steals to get more. A Chinaman is insane about gambling. 80 and half his crime comes from it. It must be kept down. And the other business, any sort of supervision, they're no so long as they keep outside the penal code. Ask doctor about that. It's outside our department here. We are in Bentinck Street, and you can be driven to the Great Eastern in a few minutes. Joss houses. Oh yes, if you want more horrors, Superintendent Lamb will take you round with him tomorrow afternoon at 5. Report yourself at the Beau Bazar Thana at 5 minutes to good night. The police depart, and in a few minutes the silent, well-ordered respectability of Old Council House Street, with the grim Free Kirk at the end of it, is reached. All good Calcutta has gone to bed. The last tram has passed, and the peace of the night is upon the world. Would it be wise and rational to climb the spire of that kirk and shout, after the fashion of the great lion-slayer of Terskin, "O true believers, decency is a fraud and a sham. There is nothing clean or pure or wholesome under the stars, and we are all going to perdition together. Amen." On second thoughts, it would not, for the spire is slippery, the night is hot, and the police have been specially careful to warn their charge that he must not be carried away by 81, the sight of horrors that cannot be written or hinted at. "Good morning," says the policeman, tramping the pavement in front of the Great Eastern, and he nods his head pleasantly to show that he is the representative of law and peace, and that the city of Calcutta is safe from itself for the present. 82. Chapter Roman 8. Concerning Lucia. Was a woman, such a woman, cheeks so round and lips so red. On the neck, the small head buoyant like the bellflower in its bed. Time must be filled in somehow, till 5 this afternoon, when Superintendent Lamb will reveal more horrors. Why not the trams aiding go to the old Park Street Cemetery? It is presumption, of course, because none other than the great Sir W. W. Hunter once went there, and wove from his visit certain fascinating articles for the Englishman, the memory of which lingers even to this day, though they were written fully 2 years since. But the great Sir W. W. went in his legislative consular brougham, and never in an unbridled tramcar which pulled up somewhere in the middle of Durhamtola. You want go Park Street, no trams going Park Street. You get out here. Calcutta tram conductors are not polite. Some day one of them will be hurt. 83. The car shuffles unsympathetically down the street, and the evicted is stranded in Durhamtola, which may be the Hammersmith Highway of Calcutta. Providence arranged this mistake, and paved the way to a great discovery, now published for the first time. Durhamtola is full of the people of India walking in family parties and groups and confidential couples, and the people of India are neither Hindu nor Mussulman Jew Ethiop Geber. Expatriated British, they are the Eurasians, and there are hundreds and hundreds of them in Durhamtola. Now there is Papa, with a shining black hat, fit for a counselor of the Queen, and Mama, whose silken attire is tight upon her portly figure, and the brood, made up of straw-headed, olive-cheeked, sharp-eyed little boys, and leggy maidens wearing white openwork stockings. Calculated to show dust, there are the young men who smoke bad cigars and carry themselves lordly such as have incomes. There are also the young women with the beautiful eyes and the wonderful dresses, which always fit so badly across the shoulders, and they carry prayer books or baskets, because they are either going to mass or the market without doubt. These are the people of India. They were born in it, bred 84 in it, and will die in it. The Englishman only comes to the country, and the natives of course were there from the first, but these people have been made here, and no one has done anything for them except talk and write about them. Yet they belong, some of them, to old and honorable families, hold houses, messuages, and tenements. In Sealda, and are rich a few of them, they all look prosperous and contented, and they chatter eternally in that curious dialect that no one has yet reduced to print beyond what little they please to reveal now and again in the newspapers. We know nothing about their life, which touches so intimately the white on the one hand, and the black on the other. It must be interesting, more interesting than the colorless Anglo-Indian article, but who has treated of it? There was one novel once in which the second heroine was an Eurasian. She was a strictly subordinate character, and came to a sad end. The poet of the race, Henry Desrosiers, of whom Mr. Thomas Edwards wrote a history, was bitten with Keats and Scott and Shelley, and overlooked in his search for material things that lay nearest to him. All this mass of humanity in Durhamtola is unexploited and almost unknown. Wanted therefore a writer from among the Eurasians, who 85 shall write, so that men shall be pleased to read a story of Eurasian life. Then outsiders will be interested in the people of India, and will admit that the race has possibilities. A futile attempt to get to Park Street from Durhamtola ends in the market. Hog Market, men call it, perhaps a knight of that name built it. It is not one half as pretty as the Crawford Market in Bombay, but it appears to be the trysting place of young Calcutta. The natural inclination of youth is to lie abed late, and to let the seniors do all the hard work. Why therefore should Pyramus, who has to be ruling account forms at 10, and Thisbe, who cannot be interested in the price of second-quality beef, wander in studiously correct raiment round and about the stalls before the sun is well clear of the earth? Pyramus carries a walking stick with imitation silver straps upon it, and there are cloth tops to his boots, but his collar has been 2 days worn. Thisbe crowns her dark head with a blue velvet tam-o'-shanter, but one of her boots lacks a button, and there is a tear in the left-hand glove. Mama, who despises gloves, is rapidly filling a shallow basket that the coolie boy carries with vegetables, potatoes, purple brinjals. And oh, Pyramus, do you ever kiss Thisbe? 86. When Mama is not near. Garlicia Lusson of the Bazaar. Mama is generous in her views on garlic. Pyramus comes round the corner of the stall looking for nobody in particular. Not Hind is elaborately polite to Mama. Somehow he and Thisbe drift off together, and Mama, very portly and very voluble, is left to chaffer and sort and select alone. In the name of the sacred unities, do not young people retire to the meat stalls to exchange confidences? Come up to this end, where the roses are arriving in great flat baskets, where the air is heavy with the fragrance of flowers, and the young buds and greenery are littering all the floor. They want thee prefer talking by the dead. Unromantic muttons, where there are not so many buyers. How they babble! There must have been a quarrel to make up. Thisbe shakes the blue velvet tam-o'-shanter and says, "Oh, yes," scornfully. Pyramus answers, "Noa, Noa, don't say that. Mama's basket is full." And she picks up Thisbe hastily. Pyramus departs. He never came here to do any marketing. He came to meet Thisbe, who in 10 years will own a figure very much like Mama's. May their ways be smooth before them, and after honest service of the government, may Pyramus retire on Rs. 250 per Mensen into a 87 nice little house somewhere in Mongha or Chunar. From love by natural sequence to death, where is the Park Street Cemetery? 100 Garyans leap from their boxes and invade the market. and after a short struggle one of them uncarts his capture in a burial ground, a ghastly new place close to a tramway. This is not what is wanted. The living dead, a hereth people whose names are not yet altogether perished, and whose tombstones are tended. Where are the old dead? Nobody goes there, says the Garuan. It is up that road. He points up a long and utterly deserted thoroughfare running between high walls. This is the place, and the entrance to it, with its malley waiting with one brown battered rose its grilled door, and its professional notices, bears a hideous likeness to the entrance of similar churchyard. But once inside, the sightseer stands in the heart of utter desolation, all the more forlorn for being swept up Lower Park Street, cuts a great graveyard in two. The guidebooks will tell you when the place was opened, and when it was closed. The eye is ready to swear that it is as old as Herculaneum and Pompeii. The tombs are small houses. It is as though we walked down the streets of A88 town, so tall axe they, and so closely do they stand, a town shriveled by fire and scarred by frost and siege. They must have been afraid of their friends rising up before the due time, that they weighted them with such cruel mounds of masonry. Strong man, weak woman, or somebody's infant son aged 15 months. It is all the same for each. The squat obelisk, defaced classic temple, the cellaret of Chunam, or the candlestick of brickwork heavy slab, the rust-eaten railings, the whopper-jawed cherubs, and the apoplectic angels. Men were rich in those days, and could afford to put 100 cubic feet of masonry into the grave of even so humble a person as J.N.O. Clements, captain of the country service, 1820, when the dearly beloved had held rank answering to that of commissioner. The efforts are still more sumptuous, and the verse, well, the following speaks for itself. Soft on thy tomb shall fond remembrance shed the warm yet unavailing tear, and purple flowers that deck the honored dead shall strew the loved and honored bier. Failure to comply with the contract does not, let us hope, entail forfeiture of the earnest money, or the honored dead might be grieved. The 89 slab is out of his tomb and leans foolishly against it. The railings are rotted, and there are no more lasting ornaments than blisters and stains, which are the work of the weather, and not the result of the warm yet unavailing tear. The eyes that promised to shed them have been closed any time these 70 years. Let us go about and moralize cheaply on the tombstones, trailing the robe of pious reflection up and down the pathways of the grave. Here is a big and stately tomb, sacred to Lucia, who died in 1776, a Roman 500, aged 23. Here also be verses which an irreverent thumb can bring to light. Thus they wrote, when their hearts were heavy in them, 116 years ago. What needs the emblem, what the plaintive strain, what all the arts that sculpture ear expressed, to tell the treasure that these walls contain? Let those declare it most who knew her best. The tender pity she would oft display shall be with interest at her shrine returned. Connubial love, connubial tears repay, and Lucia loved shall still be Lucia mourned. Though closed the lips, though stopped the tuneful breath, the silent clackled monitress shall teach, in all the alarming eloquence of death. With double pathos to the heart shall preach 90, shall teach the virtuous maid, the faithful wife, if young and fair, that young and fair was she. Then close the useful lesson of her life, and tell them what she is, they soon must be. That goes well even after all these years, does it not? And seems to bring Lucia very near, in spite of what the later generation is pleased to call the stiltedness of the old-time verse. Who will declare the merits of Luciad in her spring, before there was even a Hickey's Gazette to chronicle the amusements of Calcutta, and publish with scurrilous asterisks the liaisons of heads of departments? What pot-bellied East Indiaman brought the virtuous maid up the river, and did Lucia make her bargain, as the cant of those times went, on the first, second, or third day after her arrival? Or did she, with the others of the batch, give a spinster's ball as a last trial following the custom of the country? No, she was a fair Kentish maiden sent out at a cost of £500 English money under the captain's charge to wed the man of her choice, and he knew Clive well, had had dealings with O'Micand, and talked to men who had lived through the terrible night in the Black Hole. He was a rich man. Lucia's battered tomb proves it, and he gave Lucia all that her heart could wish. 91, a green-painted boat to take the air in on the river of evenings, coffrey slave boys who could play on the French horn, and even a very elegant neat coach with a genteel Rutland roof, ornamented with flowers, very highly finished 10 best polished plate glasses, ornamented with a few elegant medallions enriched with mother of pearl that she might take her drive on the course, as befitted a factor's wife. All these things he gave her. And when the convoys came up the river, and the guns thundered, and the servants of the Honourable, the East India Company, drank to the king's health, be sure that Lucia, before all the other ladies in the fort, had her choice of the new stuffs from England, and was cordially hated in consequence. Tilly Kettle painted her picture a little before she died, and the hot-blooded young writers did duel with small swords in the fort ditch, for the honour of piloting her through a minuet at the Calcutta Theatre or the Punch House, but Warren Hastings danced with her instead, and the writers were confounded every man of them. She was a toast far up the river, and she walked in the evening on the bastions of Fort William, and said, "La, I protest, it was there that she exchanged congratulations with all her friends on the 20th of October 92, when those who were alive gathered together to felicitate themselves on having come through another hot season. And the Menevan, the sober factor, saw no wrong herget, most royally and Britishly drunk on Madeira, that had twice rounded the Cape. But Lucia fell sick, and the doctor who went home after 7 years, with 5 locks and a half in a corner of this vast graveyard to his account, said that it was a pucker or putrid fever, and the system required strengthening, so they fed Lucia on hot curries and mulled wine worked up with spirits, and fortified with spices for nearly a week, at the end of which time she closed her eyes on the weary river and the fort. Forever and a gallant with a turn for Bell's letters, wept openly as men did then, and had no shame of it, and composed the verses above set, and thought himself a neat hand at the penstep his vitals, but the factor was so grieved that he could write nothing at all, could only spend his money, and he counted his wealth by Laxon, a sumptuous grave. A little later on he took comfort, and when the next batch came out. But this has nothing whatever to do with the story of Lucia. The virtuous maid, the faithful wife, her ghost, went to Mrs. Westland's powder ball, and looked very beautiful.